So when you think of memory, how do you think it works to retrieve a memory?
What is that? The synaptic path refires off of some trigger, whether it's a touch, sound, sense.
Me, it's just recall of experiences.
Yeah.
And the more impactful the experience, the easier the recall.
It's built on associations. So we've got the amygdala in our brain, which sort of that role is to connect emotions to our memories. Because once something makes its way into your long-term memory, you may not consciously remember it, but it can be retrieved. Not everything gets to long-term.
Okay.
Some things sort of fizzle out in short-term.
Like me in a lot of people's lives. I'm strictly short-term.
Short-term memory. I do not believe that.
So back to what I was saying. What I was saying.
What's up, friends, family, and fans? Welcome to Life on Podcast. This is where we listen and inspire friends in entertainment.
And everywhere.
Yes, sir, because life happens to everyone. And we are lifing today.
Yes,
with our very special guest, Dr. Eanah Whaley.
Thank you.
Hey,
It
lady.
is Whaley, right?
Hello.
How you
It
doing?
is Whaley.
Yes.
Because I be jacking names up on
But Dr. Eanah, you could just
Dr.
say
Eanah.
Dr.
Okay.
Eanah.
I'm
Right on.
phonetically gifted, but
There we
sometimes I be like... What's up, Dr. Eanah?
What's up?
So Dr. Eanah has a very unique gift and calling, and she works in a unique space. And we're going to let you kind of share with listeners how you got started and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to mix psychology and music, brain and frequencies, and namaste and
And he
all
fumbles
that.
it again. There you go.
So what's up, doctor? So when we say doctor, we really mean doctor. So it's not like some honorary stuff or whatever.
Yeah, where
She
did we
knows
go to
somebody.
school? What did we study?
Yeah.
And how did we
Okay,
get to
so
it?
I'm from the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did a bachelor's, double majored my undergrad at Temple, sociology and psychology.
Nice.
Then I went on to get a master's in psychology.
From Temple too?
Also at Temple.
Was it Go Eagles? Is that what it is up there?
Eagles, yeah.
Or was it the Owls? I can't
Owls
Owls,
is Temple.
right?
Eagles is
There you go.
the whatever. I'm not a sports person.
got you.
Whatever's above college.
That's pro. That's a pro.
Oh, you mean the
Pro.
Philadelphia?
That's the Philadelphia.
Yes,
Eagles.
pro.
That's that part I got. Yes, I could.
so
We need to get you straight on that. But go ahead.
Temple for undergrad and master's.
Okay.
And then about halfway through my master's program, I was like, I think I want to go further. So I actually wanted to get a PhD from Temple, but I got the advice you should not get 3 degrees from the same school.
What is that?
What's that?
They just said you should kind of spread it out a little bit, like anyone not from this area might look at that. So I went to Penn State, just up the road.
Okay.
3 hours up the road.
Good school. You got your PhD from Penn State?
I did.
Jesus.
Yeah, PhD psychology from Penn State. And I, became licensed. So you can get your degree, but then you have to become licensed. You take an awful exam called the EPPP. So I passed that. And then I also got board certified in 2018 in clinical psychology.
Okay, so I can't be crazy around you and you not know is what I'm getting.
Well, I'm not a mind reader, but I do. If I'm around you enough, I might pick up on some patterns.
So you already know about this one here.
Psycho. And then I'm feeling highly underaccomplished right now.
2 degrees from one from somewhere else.
Man.
Okay.
No, but that is awesome. All right, so let's go through. All right,
Yeah.
so now you have your degree.
Yep.
Now, did you go right into a practice, and what is it that you practice? So let's do a short little journey on your
Yeah.
career path here.
Got you. So I was something called a health profession scholar. So the military actually paid for my PhD.
Oh,
Nice.
what branch were you in?
Air Force.
Okay.
Oh, so she was super smart.
I was almost in the Air Force.
Almost on.
Yeah, I
camera.
went through MEPS in
Hey,
Philly.
Brandy.
I went through MEPS in Philly.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, and I scored in the 90th percentile.
On the outside. Wow.
Yep. But I had an ulcer, a duodenal ulcer, and flat feet. And literally, they couldn't let me.
I am literally starting to believe this story because the details actually haven't changed. Like you either have rehearsed it so good, or it really happened.
It really happened. I was in Civil Air Patrol for 3 years.
How old were you with an ulcer? That's
19. So I got an ulcer. It hit so I was trying to come down to Morehouse, and then it turned out that I couldn't go. And they're thinking that stressed me out so bad or whatever, but I don't know how that all can suddenly make me have an ulcer. I don't understand
you
that.
might have been prone to it. I was going to say.
Right, but I had some
a lot of
stomach
stress.
issues growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
But I had the ulcer attack during that period. And so I did go to community college, and then I had a .97 GPA there.
That I believe.
And so
like, see
Mom
that.
was like, either you get out or you join the military. So I went down to the Air Force, and like I said, I scored really well, but then because of the ulcer and flat feet,
Yeah.
didn't go any further.
Okay.
You know?
Well, I think
Here I am.
things tend to happen
That's right.
as they should.
I wouldn't have met you guys.
This is true.
Would we even be here in this very moment?
Oh, okay. I was
Had
like,
you gone, not existential.
yeah. I was trying to say, how does that work? Let me
The three
see.
of us probably wouldn't
All right,
be
so
here.
go
Okay,
ahead.
so
So,
yes,
so Air Force. So what was it called? Occupational what?
I was a health profession
I'm sorry,
scholar.
health profession
health
scholar.
profession
Health
scholar. And so for years, I did about, 7-8 years, your typical clinical work. So seeing patients, just, all day patient care, depression, anxiety, relationship problems, PTSD, personality disorders, run of the mill. So I really got a good foundation. And then about 4 years ago, I moved out of clinical work and I started specializing more in like forensic consulting. So consulting on personalities of like offender behavior, victim behavior, how to interview a child who's been victimized, like depending on their age, things like that. But about 2 years ago, I had sort of another shift, and that's what sort of, I think, led me here.
Right.
So for context, I'll put out there that I had a very tragic event happen to me in 2012. So I became a mom very young. I had my daughter in high school. I was 17.
Whoa, I didn't even know this.
Yes, high school. So I was pregnant my whole senior year, gave birth in April, and went to the prom in May. Okay.
Okay.
In 1998.
But wait, you're stopping at prom. I mean, ladies, we're talking about you had your. All right, so how old were you again?
17.
17 years
when I had
old.
her. Yeah.
And went through all of this. And I mean, eventually I understand what happened along the path. But
Yeah.
still, you got your PhD though. Like,
That's
seriously.
that's another podcast, because that road of getting back to school, I mean, we were homeless. There were a lot of things that happened
Yeah.
before I was able to set myself on the path to lead me.
So I
to-
won't interject. I'll let you go ahead and
Yeah,
continue
no,
on.
interject away. It's conversational. So, went to school, single mom for years and years. When I was in my PhD program, about halfway through, when my daughter was 14, she passed away. She was at her bus stop. She got hit by a car that was going way too fast early in the morning. So obviously, life-altering. Not even any word to describe it. So
none.
if we think about like the stories of our lives, like there's these points that, whether they're good or bad, that are very pivotal. So having her was a pivotal point, and losing her,
Yeah, for sure. Say
Sometimes I don't know what to, because sometimes
Right.
when we have these conversations, we know some of these details going into it. This is the first time I'm hearing this.
Sorry, English.
No. It's
Oh, not an ambush at
okay.
all.
It's not an
Yeah.
ambush at all. It changes completely how I was approaching what we were here to even talk about,
Yeah.
because I thought we were coming from a fully medical. How do you restore yourself? How do you?
Oh, we are.
How do you get to a point of enlightenment? How do you
Getting there.
discover things about yourself? But at the same time, I'm discovering that maybe even this path of getting to that had to have been necessary for. I don't even know the term to use. Your healing process, which
Yeah.
seems to be not a heavy enough phrase to even use for what we just talked about.
Healing present, right? Like not
Yeah.
healed, it will be a lifelong journey of healing. So, but had I sent these bullet points over last night, you would have seen.
But I mean, it opens a completely different door, though, because now I want to ask, what trajectory was your life on prior to
that,
something so tragic? Mm-hmm. And then there's undoubtedly this time that's just a gap of, I'm assuming, feeling lost and
Of
empty
course,
and
yeah.
sad and hurt and angry,
It's been almost 11 years, and there's.
and it's still there.
Oh, absolutely. It will forever be
Yeah.
there.
I want to know that. I'm interested to know the woman you were becoming after having a daughter so young, and then into the point to where you are now, when that other pivotal point is in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, so, gosh. Is that on my? Yeah, no.
I might be off. I might be off book now, But in my defense,
It's always on books. It's all good.
So I think that leading up to, I had her very young. So my whole identity was in being a mom, being a single mom. It was difficult, right? So Section 8, food pantries, whatever I had to do. And I always had this kind of like guilt. Like, gosh, like she didn't ask to be born like to a couple of kids. Like I have to do something better for her. So that was kind of always she was always like my guiding light, like my North Star, like whatever I have to do, like I might not eat, she's gonna eat, whatever I gotta do, work. So at the time I lost her, I was pretty much at the end of my PhD program, getting ready to go on internship, which I was gonna do with the military as part of like my payback. And I was actually, she passed in October. So when I get to the music part, this will all make sense of kind of where I got. But so in that same week that my daughter died, my grandmother also died. Within probably 2 to 3 days of each other.
What?
And
Wow.
anybody who knows me, and I can't make this ish up. She died the day before my birthday. My birthday's October 18th. She died October 17th. My grandmother died a few days later. So within a week, life turned upside down. And my grandmother was probably the closest person to me. It's my mother's mother. And, she would have been the person that I would have leaned on the most for support. And, they went together. I have my own thoughts now that I'm a little further along in the journey of why they went together. But at the time, it kind of threw me off track. But I did what a lot of people do. I was in shock for a long time, and it got really, 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 really dark.
Sure.
Really dark, and there was no middle for me. It was, I'm either going to be in this pit and probably never come out, or I'm going to shove this all away and put on a smile and compartmentalize and deal with this when I can.
That's
and
a
I
difficult
chose
ultimatum
the
to give
latter.
yourself, though.
Was there ever the option to check out?
Did I ever want to kill myself?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that I had never been suicidal in like the traditional sense. I study this stuff, like how people get to that point, like they feel like a burden, they feel hopeless. There are more, risk factors than protective factors and all those things. But for me, it was very concrete and very logical. It was my child has gone somewhere and that is where I need to go. But there wasn't like a deep depression with it. It was just a very, I have a religious background. I was raised in like your typical Black church, if there is such a thing, kind of fire, brimstone, heaven, hell. And I was and still am terrified of hellfire. Like they put that in me at a very early age. So it became not an option pretty quickly for me because I came to the conclusion, I'm like, I will be so salty if I do this. Trying to follow her.
Right.
And
then
I
you're
end
not.
up in a different place.
Right.
Like, so I'll just wait. So
Right.
I spent probably about 10 years just kind of getting by. Not really healing. I went to therapy. I took medication. I would go on grief retreats. And I found a way to live with it, but there wasn't a true healing. I read a quote. I would describe it as like, so the grief, the losing her left like a big hole. And I spend my days kind of tiptoeing around it and my nights falling in it.
Yeah.
As soon as I could be alone, which is not really a great way to live. Did that for years and years. Had, 2 more children. It was really important to me to have more children, which are I think children shouldn't be born with a job, but I say my kids were born to kind of like give me new purpose. So about 2 years ago, I had sort of stopped celebrating my birthday after she passed because it was so weird to get another year older, so close to when I lost her. But I started, so this is where the science kind of comes in a little bit. I started realizing, like, I spent 14 years with her. Deja's my daughter. I spent 14 years with Deja. But my brain kept sort of, like, recycling these same, like, 15 or 20 memories. And I'm like, where's the rest? Like, where are all the other memories that I have of her? And the memories my brain was choosing to focus on weren't the greatest ones. It was like that day she came home in 6th grade and tried to ask me something, and I'd had a long day, and so I was rude. It wasn't the good stuff. So then I stopped, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I know how memory works, right? So when you think of memory, how do you think it works for like to retrieve a memory? How
What is that? The synaptic path refires off of some trigger, whether it's a touch, sound, sense. It's vague. It's been a while. It's been a minute.
But
but I'm on the right track.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Me, it's just recall of experiences.
Yeah.
And the more impactful the experience, the easier the recall.
Yeah.
For me.
There's recall and memories. When you remember something, so people sometimes think of memory like, I'm going to like play this video, or I'm going to go pull out this file and do that. It's not that. It's built on associations.
Right.
So think like branches of a tree or like a spider web. So like one thing triggers another, triggers another.
And would you say those are feeling and emotional associations, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, because so we've got the amygdala in our brain, which sort of that role is to connect emotions to our memories. So when you remember something, you're actually recreating it. You're recreating it in your mind. So I said to myself, like, all I have to do, I need to just trigger myself. Yeah. So I got out her iPod, dusted it off, and I started listening to her music. So 14 in 2012, which I think was on her iPod, Mindless Behavior, Justin Bieber, a bunch of Korean bands,
K-pop
like,
was big.
Never heard of. Yeah. All kinds of stuff. And I would just sit and close my eyes and listen to it. And the memories just came like flooding back. Almost like, because once something makes its way into your long-term memory, you may not consciously remember it, but it can be retrieved if it gets to long-term. Not everything gets to long-term. Okay. Some things sort of fizzle out in short-term. There's like an encoding that has to happen through like rehearsal and repetition.
Like me in a lot of people's lives. Yeah. I'm strictly short-term.
Short-term memory. I do not believe that. I don't. So I started listening to her music. Music was always very big for me growing up, big for us. Like we would sing in the car all the time. We would drive back and forth from Philly to Penn State and listen to like the Dreamgirls soundtrack or, Anita Baker, the Winans. Like she might pick, I might pick. Right. So I started singing songs that reminded me of her. And I'm like, I feel better. Like I'm remembering more and I'm starting to feel better. I'm like, that's great for me, I made a little karaoke setup in my basement, started like singing karaoke. And I'm like, when I sing, like I get a rush and I'm not a singer, right. So fast forward again, I start making a documentary around the 10-year mark. I said, I really want to know how everybody's doing because my family kind of splintered. Not that we stopped talking to each other, but I think there's like this myth out there that people grieve together. Like we all lost one person, so we're going to sit around and kumbaya and tell stories. Yeah. It doesn't always happen that way. People go into their own little paths. Yeah. So I started a documentary about just kind of search for meaning, talking to her soccer teammates from high school. It's been 10 years. Like, how are you doing? Your best friend died when you were 14. How's that been for you? So on that path, so I'm filming a documentary, but my life is lifing. So January, there's an artist named Mumu Fresh who I'm a huge fan of. She's a singer, songwriter, sound healer. She's amazing, rapper as well. She had a songwriting class. Just scrolling through, and this is like how one choice can completely like change.
Your whole trajectory.
People think they have to have a whole plan and map it out and this and that. I saw an Instagram ad and I was like, a therapeutic songwriting class? I'm going to do that. So I take the class and I write a song about my daughter. And that opened up the floodgates for me. I don't know if it was writing the song or singing the song that did it, but that's when it clicked. To me, that's when my healing started. 10 years after I started the process, I found the thing. So I wrote that song, and then that opened the floodgates. I just started writing more songs. That's how I met you. I'm here. And I'm transitioning now kind of away from clinical work, forensic work, into like more coaching and things like that. So I would say what do they call it when you foot stomp something or pet it? My soapbox, I guess, is... we would not be good charades like partners. I was just giving you
I'm amazing.
Really?
Yeah, I'm amazing.
Okay. But we'll see. But my soapbox is kind of the really helping people. I can do all the traditional stuff if people want a traditional coach, but I also can coach people through like creative processes and really encouraging people to tap into creativity. Consider singing. even if you're not,
Even if you can.
even if you
Right.
think you can't. I think not enough people sing. There's so many benefits. There's so many positive things that happen when you make a noise, when you sound.
What are those things?
What
Like
are those
what are those
things?
basic things that happen that we're talking about that can set you on the path of figuring out this next?
Of singing in general. Okay, so benefits of singing. So there's tons of research studies out there, and I won't quote everyone, but in general, the research has shown people who sing regularly, it's associated with better immune system, overall more positive well-being, reduced stress levels. It can help with depression, anxiety. There's been studies that show it can help reduce snoring. Like there's so many things when we see and that might have something to do with the breath control, but we see a link and we know statistically that it's by more than chance that these two things are connected.
Okay.
We may not know the mechanism of why. When we sing, all kinds of stuff happens in our brain. So chemicals get released. So you've got your endorphins, right? Endorphins are these hormones that get released during stress or pleasurable activities that kind of promote a good feeling. Endorphins get released when you sing. We've got serotonin, which is a mood stabilizer. If you look at most medications for depression or anxiety, they're SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Your brain will produce more of that naturally when you sing. Now, Dr. Eanah is not saying to not take your medication. I'm not saying that.
Right.
Do your therapy, take medication, follow your doctor's orders. But
Just sing when you're doing it.
Yeah.
Sing while you're doing it. Yeah.
Dopamine, which is it gives you this sort of, it's like a reward, the reward center of the brain. It's what's responsible for a runner's high. So the endorphins might ease your pain a little bit so you can keep running, but the dopamine gives you that high so you want to do it again.
Right.
You want to repeat the activity. Oxytocin, right?
Yep.
The trust hormone, the bonding hormone. It's what gets released when a mother breastfeeds a baby. That gets released when you sing.
I don't think I knew
The
that.
bonding.
It's part of the reason why we can't understand. It's literally where it comes from, the scientific
Gotcha.
thing. Because that bonding phase that happens in that first day, we
Can't
we'll
mansplain that one.
No,
And it's also
we'll never
one
have
of the
that.
reasons why when women stop breastfeeding, they
Go into
sometimes go through
depression.
depression.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of shame around not breastfeeding. I mean, that's another topic, but you go through, I went through it. I'm like, why am I so sad? I freed up 15 hours a week by not breastfeeding and pumping anymore. But and then when you sing with other people, like in a choir, the oxytocin doubles, the trust, the bonding. So there's all kinds of benefits.
So I'm hearing two things.
Yes.
One, I need to not get so upset when people come in my rehearsal room and they sound like chickens.
You should
I
not.
should just go and be like, you know what? You are overcoming something. You're healing, and I'm here to support that. Matter of fact, here's an hour for free. Continue your healing.
That last for free part, you don't have to throw that in.
I'm here to support. I'm here to support. And the other thing I'm hearing too, important people know this, just because one, you don't have to be able to sing,
Right.
to get these
It
benefits.
has nothing to do with talent. These benefits are so-called talent.
Right.
Because who decides what talent is? It has nothing to do with ability.
And if you do have what might be understood as talent, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a recording artist.
Right.
So my point is there's so many other avenues and benefits and purposes for singing.
Yeah.
And it all doesn't mean making an album all the time.
No, it
and I think
doesn't.
if people know that and on purpose start exploring those things, it can kind of release a little bit of pressure for that
all
kind of
kinds
stuff.
of creativity.
Yeah.
Not just singing, painting. And people who sing for a living sometimes don't experience the same benefits that non-professional singers do because
Nope.
it's a job
It's
now.
a job
It's a
now.
business.
Yeah.
There's
Yep.
stress. It's not when they were
Yep.
just singing in the church choir for, because it felt good or just to praise God.
Yep.
Yeah, so creativity in general, that's one thing I talk with my clients a lot about. I think a lot of us, people who don't have a creative job or don't have something creative as part of their everyday life, maybe you just work a 9 to 5 or whatever you're doing, you don't have the time. We think back, not to be a cliche psychologist, your inner child, right? Inner child.
Hey,
Go
them childhood trauma things are real.
They're very real.
so real. It's
Very
not even
real.
funny.
But there are a lot of things in childhood that are just kind of ripe to be nurtured and explored that it doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
You could be the next piano prodigy, but if your family can't afford a piano,
Right.
you may never know.
That's
if
true.
your parents don't kind of push you any type of direction. So, we do a lot of talk about values and what your life looks like now and maybe some things that you left unexplored. You always wanted to play the flute, go get a flute.
Yeah, everything does, and that's the thing. Every creativity doesn't have to be a vocation.
No.
And that's what and a lot of times even with the kids, you're like, oh, he does this well. He's going to grow up to be this.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
It's just an outlet. It's just a way for him. I mean, I'm a super creative guy, and I have tons of areas that I'm creative in, but I'm not trying to make a freaking career out of every single one of them.
I mean, we kind of, as a society in general, over in this part of the world, we demonize that a bit. I don't know if it happens to you. It happens to me. I had a bunch of talents when I was a kid, and my aunt still asked me, "Why aren't you still drawing? Or why didn't you become an architect?" And I was like,
right.
I didn't draw. I did it because it was fun.
I was
really. I mean, and like now, the cool thing I like is like some of my favorite artists. Like I didn't know Neo could draw. I had no idea. And he was just on Instagram one time, and he drew a bear, and like he named it. And I was like, this dude like can actually draw. Like like for real. But that was just something he did as an outlet, and we're finding out everything. Like Chris Brown does everything as a talent. Like he's just like everything. Name a skill, and he's good at it.
Like when he found out I was a massage therapist on the side.
I recently just found that out too. You sprinkled into the conversation, and I was like, pause.
And it was one of when he first said it, because I know Stone jokes a lot, so I was like, hilarious. And I was about to throw a bunch of jokes out, but then when I found out that it was something he was taking serious, and that there is a niche of people that appreciate that it must be
and pay me for it.
That too. Those outlets don't always have to be that.
Massage therapist on retainer. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to get. This
I'm trying to get that lifestyle. I'm trying to get my makeup artist to come to my room. I'm trying to get my massage therapist on retainer. I'm trying to get me a driver.
Now, so
Eanah, ladies and gentlemen,
the sound wizardry and sound magic is what I like to call it now, because it's a real thing, but people are just now getting to the actual science of it. You're hearing about sound baths becoming more and more, which I do about 2 or 3 times a year. People are starting to use just specific, like the solfeggio frequencies, that they'll use targeted frequencies for specific healing purposes.
Yeah, I read somewhere 528 hertz is like
it's the God frequency.
Optimal frequency. It's the frequency of like chlorophyll, like what makes plants green. Someone played it outside in their garden, and it
blooms everything. I believe Ohm resonates
at the God tone or something like that. God frequency. And 440 is supposed to be the
So 440 is, so this is one of the things that comes up a lot. I played with the Jacksonville Symphony Youth Orchestra for a long time, and we tuned, most orchestras in the world on this one tuned to 440, but you start getting orchestras on the other side of the world that tune to 432.
And I just told that to the freaking interns and engineers the other day, and they stood there to correct me.
Did they?
And I was like, no, but 432 actually is in tune with your body and the earth.
Yeah.
But they were getting it confused with what musicians and stuff port to 440.
Yeah, and I mean it is. And as a musician, I mean I've been playing classical music for almost 30 years now. You feel that release of tension when you drop the tuning, that A tune from 440 to 432. You actually feel that release, and it does feel more relaxed. And there's a whole slew of information of why it switched to that, and I'm not going to go into all of it now. But it's definitely, if you've got an afternoon to go down that rabbit trail of why it was done, it's some very interesting reads for not only chemically but like psychologically what it does to you.
Now, on that side of the science, do you incorporate that at all?
Like, it's actually where I was going with that.
Okay.
So I am not, like, I take that, I would never just be like, hey, I can pick up a bowl and give you a sound bath. Like, that is a completely separate science field, art ancient of itself. So I do have a really good friend who does it, but I appreciate it. I understand the basics of the science of it, but I definitely know like my lane. I would have to like go get, I think, certified, and to be able, I don't want to accidentally give somebody the wrong frequency.
Right, it triggers some kind of thing. You know, I apologize if there's anyone that deals with something like that.
Let me talk to your editor, please. Do you have an HR department? Your HR department.
I'm the editor. I'm all of it. So in taking that into account and talking about all of those things and the effects that it has on the brain and the effects that it has psychologically, in your practice, like, how do you determine, or how do you help someone determine what they actually need? Or is it just, hey, I want you to sing something now and just see how it makes you feel? Like, where do you start?
Definitely not a one-size-fits-all. So with any client that I have, we're going to start with the first several sessions. I have to get to know you. I'm not going to make any assumptions. And even when people come to therapy and they know that they're there, or come to coaching, they know that they're there, they're not it's going to take a few sessions
Right.
for the representative to kind of fade away for people to get comfortable.
I like that, the representative. We
Yeah.
sure as heck do walk around with that, don't we?
We do. And so I let them know these first few sessions, like you'll be talking more than me, right? I am an expert in some areas. I'm not an expert in you. So we do things like assess definitely childhood, get a full, everyone has a story
Yeah.
that they tell themselves about their life. Let me hear what's your story. What is your narrative? What are the major points? Then we can do an assessment of looking at, I love to do assessments looking at values as opposed to like how you spend your time.
Okay.
So we're going to go through and assess. These are all the things you value. How much time did you spend in each of these areas
Okay.
in the last week? If you really, really value family and you don't really value, your job that much, but your job is where you spend all your time to feed your family, right? So we get in there and see where those inconsistencies
smart.
are and then try to figure out where can we, and every client doesn't necessarily have to do something creative. I encourage it, some people have the idea in their mind that they're not creative. I'm not a creative person. Says who?
Right.
Tell me when you first had that thought,
Yeah.
Would you, in your practice, I mean, you see so many people, would you say that you can probably organize the majority of people into a certain number of separate categories for childhood traumas affecting them as adults? And then,
Gosh. I think we're all recovering from our childhoods in some way or another.
Okay.
So when I was in the more clinical, like I'm transitioning out of clinical into coaching,
Right.
and there's the differences, clinical work, working with people who kind of have like mental illnesses that are really impacting their life, right? Whether it's depression, anxiety, PTSD, unresolved trauma. Coaching is a little bit different because while people may still have those things in the background, they're functioning at a slightly, I don't want to say better, they're functioning at a level where they can really focus on these things. Nobody wants to sit and talk about, hey, why don't you try to be creative when you have like uncontrolled bipolar?
Right.
You have to, it's a privilege to be in a healthy enough space to even consider some of these other things. So as far as categorizing like a percentage of people with childhood trauma, it's interesting because I've had people sit on my couch and describe something in childhood that like I personally might not find traumatic, but it's a memory for them. Right. And they've incorporated that, and that's traumatic for them. I look at my boys sometimes and I try to be like the best gentle parent, this, that, and I'm like, they're probably going to end up on somebody's couch 20 years from now about that one time, I made the oatmeal too hot and it burned their mouth. But then you also have people who have, I don't want to say anything's more or less serious. What happens to us in childhood does shape us. You talk to different psychologists, they may have different theories. Some psychologists might say, hey, just control your thoughts now. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. I'm more of the, object relational type camp.
What do you mean?
So meaning that the relationships that we form early in our life can kind of dictate what happens later in life. Not that you can't change it, especially the relationship with your primary caregivers.
Right.
What happens when you try to get your needs met?
Yeah, for
What
sure.
happens when you, are not of service to someone? Those things kind of, it's like a critical period, early life. Like if you go to, it's the saddest thing, one of the saddest things I ever read about like a orphanage in like some place, I forget where, maybe like Ukraine or some place. And the babies, it's silent. The babies don't even cry because they know nobody's coming. Like they've learned because there's so many babies and so few staff, right? But if your baby just came home from the hospital, what do they learn? Hey, when I cry, somebody's coming in here. I'm getting a pacifier. I'm getting my diaper changed. I'm getting a boob. I'm getting, like whatever it might be. So we learn really, really early on. We're in relationship with other people early on. And so I would say that most people, some people might say like, oh, I don't have to talk about my childhood. We're going to talk about it. Even if it was peachy keen great, we're going to talk about it. Help me get to know you.
I want to ask this question with that. And you brought the baby thing up, which is a conversation I was just having with my little brother, because he has a 1-year-old, and he was asking me kind of what we did with my son. And one of the things that I learned was pattern recognition and performance change. It usually takes about 3 times of a cycle for an infant or toddler to learn something. So if they cry and you show up 3 times, they've now adapted that as being that's the response they're going to get. And then to break that, it's going to take the same amount of cycles in order to undo that. Do you see the same type of association with adults, that there's a number? Because that number seems to be a magic number in children from 3 months to about 2.5 years old. Or is it really wide ranging? Like, are we so different that, it's going to take Stone 1,000 times because his head is just so hard to learn something, whereas it may take a normal person like me 5 times to actually grasp it and make changes?
Because there's not much in there really to have to impact. So, yeah.
So what we know, the thing about kids, you're absolutely right. There are, if you think about like reinforcement schedules and like classical conditioning, and one of the worst things you can do with a kid is be intermittent, right? To sometimes give in to the tantrum, because
Father, help your children.
Help them, Lord.
Man,
it's the same science behind why people will sit at a slot machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It might. The kids, I'm gonna keep on trying because that one time it hit. So with adults, what we know about the brain is that it can be rewired.
Yes.
There's so many new studies out about like neuroplasticity and the pathways in the brain being reformed. It will vary from person to person. So if you have a pathway in your brain that sort of, let's say, every time you feel scared, you have an automatic thought, that something awful is getting ready to happen, you're anxious, and you react by, panicking, things like that. That didn't happen overnight. It took years for that path to form. But if you think about, when I was a kid, there used to be this house that we would always cut through to get to the store. It was an abandoned house, and there was no path there. But we just kept walking there, and after about a year, there was a new path, right? You can make a new path. And what happened to the old path? You stop going down the old path, and it gets overgrown. Right.
Now, with my personality, this is why I could not be a psychologist. I'm a little too mean with it.
I don't believe that.
Nah. Because all you have to tell me is what you just said was possible.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. But I get surrounded by people who are like, I'm trying to walk on this new path. Oh, look at me, I'm walking on this new path. I'm doing good because I'm walking on this new path. I know I'm walking on this. It's hard, but I'm trying to walk on this. Like that, ooh. And that's my soapbox. My soapbox is you are what you think you can. I understand what happened in the past.
Yeah.
But what happens from today forward, you are 100 in control of. And I feel that a lot of people use the crutch of the past a lot as an excuse as to why changing going forward is so difficult. And we seems like we went back and forth on this.
Did. I'm about to.
Because and this is what happens to me too. I always say this disclaimer. My friend Nikki says, stop saying disclaimers because no one listens to them. And this is why I said I couldn't be a psychologist, because I'm a little bit too black and white and stark with it. Because with me, I'm just like, I can change. Great. That's all I need to know. Let me go ahead and do what I need to do to change. You don't need to pat me on my back for every tiny little step I make, because the change hasn't been made yet. Just let me do what I need to do. Let me change. You know what I mean? And I feel that it's not, I know it's not black and white, but I feel like it's just like problem, solution.
You're very passionate about this topic.
I see. He can tell you, I'm an evangelist of human potential.
Yes, even his own until, and this is the part where I get upset with him because he holds people to that standard.
You are perfect, and you're in a perfect place. You're sitting in the perfect spot.
Yes.
We've had some conversations recently where Stone has admitted that ideation aspect of it, that getting to the concept of knowing that potential is there, and then the doing part is where he struggles. He omits
the consistency part. Remember, the doing is fine. It's the consistency part.
But that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing that people who say exactly what you were just saying are struggling with.
Right.
But then you have very little empathy for how they express that.
All right. So
I was going to say I wasn't hearing a lot of empathy, but I think what you're saying is, well, I don't think it's mean. Yeah. What you're saying, it's very personality based. Like, yes, change is possible, but it's not going to look the same for you, for me. And there's something to be said for, I can say like, okay, I can change. Let me just jump right to it. But the process.
Absolutely.
Walking the road and having setbacks and,
I have absolutely trained him to start saying Stone feels or Stone believes because he had a very, it was almost like a disclaimer because he had a real prevalent habit of applying how he saw and felt things blanketly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, and it's something that I have to grow out of, and so my empathy does lack in areas like that, and I would be the first. That's why I call it mean, but it's lack of empathy. You know what I mean?
This is growth. Him just admitting it.
Perceived
It's also,
as mean.
Huh?
It could be perceived as mean,
And it does.
depending on who
All
you
the time.
are talking with.
All
but
the
we
time.
all are coming to the table with completely different backgrounds, completely different brain wiring. Like if we're all sitting here right now, and all of a sudden, like a cat just came in. And let's say I was mauled by a cat before, like you might be like under the table, but
Right.
you're like it's just a cat, like
Right.
it's not gonna hurt you. Relax.
so in your coaching
I was
business,
not mauled by a cat. Actually, I love cats. That was just a weird example. I don't know where that came from.
I didn't want to dig that trauma up
Yeah.
if it was a real thing. I was
I
gonna
have
leave that
no
one
idea
alone.
why my brain chose that example.
In your practice, how do you weave singing into after you've had these sessions of talking and discovering and peeling back the layers of that onion, and we figure, oh, this is a thing. Are there sessions where it's all right, we're gonna sing a song, or do you incorporate songwriting or drumming or
would
something
be
into it too?
more- So if someone has a desire to try to work something out through song, or let's say they're already an artist, or they do sing, or maybe they don't, it would be the songwriting. Because so for me, the song I wrote, I listen to it, I sing it, but it's the fact that I wrote it. It came from my heart. It's called, the class was actually called Heart Song. So I think it's important. The songwriting piece is key, in my opinion, for the healing. I could write some lyrics and be like, sing this. You can sing it. And I've connected to songs written by other songwriters, but there's something about writing something for yourself. So that can happen. I actually did, they are not my clients, but I did some work with one of my nieces. Her father passed, and she always would make up songs. And so we haven't written a song yet. We've talked about it, but I shared with her a memory that she probably didn't know about her father, right? She's 9, that he and I were both big Vanessa Carlton fans. And so he was like in a motorcycle club, Philly, like you wouldn't necessarily.
Terry Crews kind of guy.
We both loved the song, Ordinary Day, just stay, just stay. And I said, you know what? I don't know if you know this. And I told her the story of how her dad loved the song. And I said, just listen to it, And it made a difference. Now I know her personally. Obviously, I can't do that with a coaching client, but there's a lot of ways we can bring music in. I'm looking to expand more into being out where the people are. If working with artists, if you are, busy, you're making an album, you're writing songs, and you don't have time to Google like Psychologist, like I will come to you. I'll come to where you are, and we can work through whatever might be blocking your creative process. The world is, I feel like I'm entering like my second act, I would call it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I try to encourage people. You can change. You can, just because you've done something one way for so long, like people say, gosh, you got a PhD in psychology and you've done these great things, but I want to do something different.
Yeah,
I want to do something, and it's healing me. I'll say one quick story that the first time I came here, and I wrote.
Where's here?
Icon Studios.
Oh, in Atlanta?
The beautiful, traffic-laden Atlanta, Georgia, ATL Shawty. Yes. It was the first time that a song I'd written, my vocal coach, Dallas, he recorded the demo for me. So it was my very first time. The first song I wrote, I sang. First time I'm hearing like a song I wrote being sung by someone who can actually like sing, okay, and adding. And I sent my sister a video because she'd heard my reference track. And I'm like, hey, Dallas, look, we're recording the song. Her feedback to me had nothing to do with the song. She wrote me back and she said, I've never seen you look so happy. I've never seen you look so happy. Like, that's what you need to be doing. And I'm like, and it hit me. I'm like, you know how they say find the thing that you would do even if nobody paid you a penny? I found it.
Yeah.
And I found the path to get here, was a long one, and it's ongoing, And even, I didn't mention it, singing and healing have been shown to help with grief as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had not previously been open to working with other people who were grieving because I knew I was still stuck. And people would always come to me, oh, your daughter died. You're a psychologist. I know this person whose child just died. You're the perfect person to talk to them. And I'd be like, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a shambles. Like, you don't want them to talk to me right now.
And that reminded me, and this is actually the last question I have for you too.
Yeah.
When you said, after 10 years, then you started healing, do you think it could have or should have happened sooner though? Yeah.
No. It had to unfold.
Yeah.
And it's what I figured out. It's not a get over, it's not a get past, it's a live with. I am every day learning to live with the fact that my daughter is gone. Yeah. That is a reality that won't change. It's like if somebody cut off my leg. Every single day I got to figure out. Now at first it was really hard. How am I get that first day? How am I get out of bed without this leg? How am I brush my teeth without my leg? Like everything. Now 10 years later, I've learned to get around, but my leg's still gone.
Right.
Like
right.
it's not. It's so.
You still be tripping.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
So I don't think it should have happened sooner.
I'm not laughing at you today. This is too serious to allow you to okay? I'm not doing that. You stop youing.
First of all, there are other Stones out there. Stone is the kind of personality when things get really dark and serious for too long, I start. So you guys do the little sunshine.
I'm the same way.
That's why my mom calls me number one sunshine.
And I don't like to make people sad. That's one thing that I've found that like I try to. But I say all that to say I actually sought out an additional certification in grief counseling. 'Cause I think that you're a psychologist. You're trained generally. That doesn't mean you can do everything.
Say that.
You have to stop and say like, can I work with this population? Just because my child died doesn't mean I can't. But I'm at a place now, 10 years later, where I've healed better. I'm open to it, to taking on clients who've lost children at whatever stage, and kind of, whether it's through traditional methods of psychology and counseling or adding the creative piece. Like I'm at a place where I think I can do that now. So.
I lost music for various reasons for a long time. It was a huge part of my life for my whole life. I mean, it got me through school, got me to and through college. And then there was just a point in my life where what I was doing just didn't allow for music creation. I wasn't able to play. I have carpal tunnel in both hands, so playing a violin is very difficult now, and that was my instrument. So I had some heartbreak with that. But I recognize now that the personal stuff that I dealt with, when I am able to pull my instruments out, or I am able to sit in front of a keyboard or a piano and actually just mess around for a little bit with nothing attached to it, I to this day still can't explain what that is I'm feeling, but everything that is happening and going on tends to go away for whatever that small amount of time is.
Yeah.
I give that long-winded setup to ask this: how do you help people realize that it's not something that you're working towards getting over, but being, because the things that I've dealt with aren't going away. The things that you've dealt with aren't going, like you said, that those, you learn to cope and to exist with them. But then you find these little things that bring joy in certain moments that seem to make everything feel okay. Yeah. And I find that a lot of people don't know that those things exist.
Yeah, it's challenging because it was even hard for me to accept the fact that like I could be happy in the midst of this never-ending pain.
Almost feeling guilty for finding happiness in it?
Absolutely guilty, and probably holding myself back from healing sooner or starting to heal, because like how... So people think that the sadder they are, like that kind of represents like how much the person meant to them. But one thing, biologically, your body cannot be in a state of grief and sadness all the time. You can try, you can want to, your body will give you a break. Whether it's you laughing at something or your body will give you a break. I think that one of the books I want to write is how to support people who are trying to support someone who's grieving. Because people don't know what to say.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. And oftentimes things can come across very insensitive or hurtful. Not by...
No, that's me all day.
By no intention of the person. I think there's support needed there. So when I kind of explain to people that it's not something I'm going to get past, sometimes you have to educate people and like remind them that, you know, okay, I had to remind people it's okay to talk about my daughter. It was really weird for a few years. Like, are we just gonna pretend she was never here, or like, you know, what's happening? But what I realized is people didn't want to upset me.
Right.
And my one friend told me, well, I don't want to remind you that she's gone. Well, I'm never gonna forget. So talk about her with me. Let me talk about her with you. And I also used to get really, I'm the type of person who, what's going on for me inside sometimes doesn't match what is happening outside.
Sure.
It's not congruent. So I could be in so much pain and someone could look at me and be like, oh, you're so, high five, you're so strong. Like, if that was me, if my child died, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Look at you. You're at work. And I'm like, I'm dying inside.
You have a good representative.
A good representative and a good mask. So telling people how I feel. Like, hey, I miss her every day. You know, it's been 10 years. I used to cry myself to sleep every night. It's not every night anymore, but it still happens. Like, I'll never stop missing her. And I may need you. I may need you even 10 years later to sit with me while I cry. You know, you have to tell people. You can't, especially when you're someone who has like a strong personality, because people want you to be okay, especially if they love you. So if you look like you're okay, they're going to go with that. They're not going to probe.
They expect you to be.
They expect you to be okay.
I've had 3 moments where I have broken down in front of family members, and it was just I can't explain what happened. I just couldn't hold myself together, and I was looked at completely differently, and still am by them. Not because they saw not so much negatively.
But there's a twinge of weakness. Yeah,
there's a chink in the armor now because no one has ever seen me in those situations.
Right.
And then once it's seen and it becomes public, but I mean it's a human reaction when you get so used to seeing a strong person and then you see them be weak. One, it shakes their foundation because they may have been drawing their strength from seeing you be strong all the time. And I witnessed those ripple effects and the people around me who just saw me as I hate to say a rock, but for lack of a better term, and then them becoming uncertain of things because they now see that, oh, well, you really don't have it all together. And I was like, yes, what I've been trying to tell you.
Yeah, I'm a person.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm a person, yeah.
I will say this. We just met, and just as you said that you and Stone felt like y'all know each other for a long time, I feel that same thing now. I'm willing to sit with you if you just need to whatever.
The vibes are
especially
good.
if it's over music or you want to do tea or coffee or whatever. If you're doing open mic nights with your stuff, I want to come.
Yeah, I want to do all of that. My other brand is Healing by Singing. I want to start.
And that's what we're getting to. What's the next thing for where you're going with it?
For me, I am right now on a wait list for coaching clients, but you can go to dreanah.com and sign up.
Can you spell Eanah for them?
Eanah.
I nailed it the first time.
Dr. Eanah. Yes, you did. You pronounced it right. I was standing in the lobby of the studio, and somebody walked by and said, "How are you doing, Eanah?" And I was really startled, like, who knows me here? And they said my name right, and it was this guy. He saw me on the schedule.
Did some homework. Good job, man.
I just saw her name on the schedule.
But you pronounced it right.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
like Eanah, Anya, Eanah. But so dreanah.com.
Right.
I've got my documentary we just finished filming. We're going into post-production. But my single, Star, which is the song dedicated to my daughter Deja, written by me, performed by me, featuring Mumu Fresh, piano melody composed by Stevie Mackey.
You didn't say you got Mumu on the song. You said she inspired it because of the class.
She inspired it. She's on the song. We just shot the video.
Okay.
So that should be coming out. I don't have an exact date yet, but probably by the end of the year.
Okay.
So I'm going to be rolling out lots of content about the making of the song, all the behind the scenes. Like, I'm at Stevie Mackey's house for a vocal lesson. That's a whole other story. And I'm like, I wrote a song. He composes a melody for me. I'm in a student in Mumu's class, and next thing I know, like, we're in a studio. And now I'm here. I wrote this song in January. All because I clicked. I think I'm going to write a song.
Nice.
Serendipitous.
I'm glad we're a part of that
Absolutely.
story.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
Here we
I
are.
mean that.
I'm grateful for the experience of just being able to sit and talk. I didn't know what to expect today. I thought we were going to fix me with,
Did you think it was
You're
an
going to learn
intervention?
that our guests,
They
the
were
guests
gonna
that
come
bring
in.
have substance,
I did.
bro. They have
Well,
substance.
They always have substance, but
Even the
I
dancer
felt like
Onyx
he was
has
setting me
substance.
up, is what I felt like. But this one turned into one of those things that when you have someone who's been through something, and who's sharing that story openly, and is in the profession of helping people who've been through things, but then being open about rediscovering at the same time, I think that's one of the most important things to share with people, because even like I haven't done as much as some people put on me. And when I talk about being in this transitional period of my life, people are confused. It's like, well, you had this career and it was great and it was all. I was like, yeah, but it was just time for something else.
Yeah, man.
We're
Time to
constantly
pivot.
changing, constantly evolving.
And then the hard thing is that when they ask you, what's the next thing? And I'm just like, I don't know. It's an honest thing right now. And I mean, it's not that I don't have things going on, but I've been that person that's been so hyper focused on the same thing for so long that it's confusing to people. And I've watched it be helpful for people to see me be weak.
Yeah.
Or hear me say, I don't know what's happening right now, because they've become so accustomed to it. So to have a doctor, and that's your job, is to help people discover what, just what they need for themselves and to coach them into becoming that. But to be fully transparent about, I'm in a season of rediscovery and putting out myself. That's beautiful.
And I think that's part of why, one of the reasons I'm shifting out of the traditional clinical world into coaching, because within traditional clinical psychology, I'm not telling you about me. That is inappropriate. You are here for help. I'm not sharing my story. And even with coaching clients, it's still all about them, but it's not ethically wrong for me to
use yourself as an example
say, hey, like, this is something I've been through, because it's a different type of relationship there. Yeah.
All right, so you gave out DrEanah.com.
DrEanah.com.
And all of your socials are on there and everything?
Eanah.
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm just a simple man. I'm StoneStafford.com. All of my socials are on there.
And Dr. Eanah was available. Apparently, it's not in the top 10 baby names, so I was able to get it.
He's still walking around with 007 on some stuff, but we're working on that.
Yeah, dude, come on.
I'm a little more complex. Just Johnny Vaughn, JUSTJONYVAN. However, lifeonpodcast.com, I would think, is pretty simple, right?
That's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can listen, you can watch, and all that kind of stuff. And more importantly, you can click the link and share it with
right
a
there.
friend. You can tell somebody, but we appreciate you guys' support, and we're still going for, and we will realize 1 million subscribers
in 2023.
Dr. Eanah, thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
being
much.
with us.
Bye.
Such a pleasure. We appreciate you guys. We love you. You know that. We'll see you next week. We out.
So back to what I was saying.